This is Blythe Fluid. And now the shipping forecast issued by the Meteorological Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at 00:15 on Saturday the 25th of May. The general synopsis at 1800. High 200 miles southwest of Fitzroy, 1029, slow moving with little change by 1800 Saturday. Low southern Norway, 1003, slow moving with little change by the same time. And now the area forecasts for the next 24 hours. Viking, north at 0. Northwesterly 3 or 4, occasionally 5 in south. Slight or moderate, showers, good. South at 0. Northwesterly 5 to 7, moderate, occasionally rough. Showers, rain later, good. 40s, Cromarty 4th. Northwest becoming cyclonic later, 4 or 5. Slight or moderate. Showers, rain later. Good, occasionally pour later. Tyne, Dogger. Cyclonic becoming southwest later, 4 or 5. Slight or moderate. Showers, rain later. Good, occasionally moderate later. Fisher. Northwesterly 5 or 6, occasionally 7 in northeast. Moderate, occasionally rough. Rain later, good. German Bight. Northwest back in southwest later, 4 or 5. Slight or moderate, fair, good. Humber, Thames, Dover, White. Variable 3 or 4, becoming southwest 4 or 5 later. Slight, occasionally moderate. Showers, good. Portland, Plymouth. West or northwest 4 or 5. Slight or moderate. Fog patches later. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor later. Biscay. North or northwest 4 or 5. Moderate. Occasional drizzle, fog patches later. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor later. Trafalgar. Cyclonic in southeast, otherwise northerly 5 to 7. Moderate or rough, fair, good. Fitzroy. In south, northerly 5 to 7. In north, westerly 4 or 5. In south, moderate or rough. In north, moderate, occasionally rough. In south, fair. In north, occasional drizzle, fog patches. In south, good. In north, moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Seoul, Lundy, Fastnet. Westerly 4 or 5. Moderate, occasionally rough. Occasional drizzle, fog patches. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Irish Sea. Variable 3 or 4, becoming southwesterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later in north. Smooth or slight, becoming slight or moderate later. Fair, then occasional rain or drizzle. Good, occasionally poor later. Shannon. Southwesterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later. Moderate, becoming rough. Occasional rain, fog patches. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Rockall. Southeasterly veering southwesterly, then becoming cyclonic later in north, 4 or 5, increasing 6 or 7 later. Moderate, becoming rough. Occasional rain, fog patches. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Malin. Variable 3 or 4, becoming south or southwest 5 or 6. Slight or moderate. Rain, fog patches. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor. Hebrides. Variable 3 or 4, becoming northeast 5 or 6. Slight or moderate. Fair, then occasional rain. Good, becoming moderate or poor. Bailey. East 4 or 5, increasing 6 or 7. Moderate, becoming rough in southwest. Rain in south, good in north, otherwise moderate or poor. Fair Isle, Faroes, southeast Iceland. Northerly or northeasterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later. Moderate, showers, good. And now the inshore waters forecast. A ridge of high pressure across the United Kingdom will sink southwards as small areas of low pressure move eastwards across northern Scotland, allowing a brisk westerly airflow to develop across many coasts. Cape Wrath to Rattray Head, including Orkney. Northwest veering north or northeast 3 or 4, occasionally 5 at first. Slight or moderate, becoming smooth or slight in east. Occasional rain or showers, fair for a time. Good, occasionally moderate. Rattray Head to Berwick-upon-Tweed. Westerly or northwesterly 4 or 5, becoming variable, mainly northerly later 3 or 4. Slight or moderate in far north and in far south, otherwise smooth or slight. Showers at first, occasional rain later. Good, occasionally moderate later. Berwick-upon-Tweed to Whitby. Cyclonic 4 or 5, becoming variable 3, then southwest 4 or 5 later. Moderate becoming slight or moderate. Showers at first, occasional rain later. Good, occasionally moderate later. Whitby to Gibraltar Point. Variable or cyclonic 3 or 4, occasionally 5 at first, becoming southwest 4 or 5 later. Slight, occasionally moderate in north, mainly fair, good. Gibraltar Point to North Foreland. Variable becoming westerly or southwesterly later, 3 or 4. Smooth or slight, mainly fair, good. North Foreland to Selsey Bill. Variable, mainly northwesterly back in southwesterly later, 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later. Smooth or slight, occasionally moderate later, mainly fair, good. Selsey Bill to Lyme Regis. Northwest back in west 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later. Smooth or slight, occasionally moderate offshore, mainly fair, mainly good. Lyme Regis to Land's End, including the Isles of Scilly. West or northwest 3 or 4, increasing 5 at times. Smooth in shelter, otherwise slight or moderate. Fog patches later in west. Moderate or good, occasionally poor later in west. Land's End to St David's Head, including the Bristol Channel. Variable, mainly west 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later. Smooth or slight in far east, otherwise moderate. Fog patches later. Moderate or good, occasionally very poor later. St David's Head to Great Orme Head, including St George's Channel. Variable 3 or less, becoming southwest 4 or 5 later. Smooth or slight until later in north, otherwise slight, occasionally moderate. Occasional drizzle later. Moderate or good, occasionally poor later. Great Orme Head to the Mull of Galloway. Strong wind warning. Variable, mainly northwest 3 or 4, back in southwest 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later. Smooth or slight, becoming slight or moderate later. Occasional rain or drizzle later. Good, occasionally moderate later. Isle of Man. West or northwest 3 or 4, back in south or southwest 4 or 5 later. Slight, occasionally moderate later. Fair, then occasional rain or drizzle. Good, becoming moderate or poor. Loch Foyle to Carlingford Loch. Variable 3 or less, becoming south 3 or 4, then veering southwest 4 or 5 later. Smooth or slight, becoming slight or moderate later in north. Fair, then occasional rain or drizzle. Moderate or good, occasionally poor later. Mull of Galloway to Mull of Kintyre, including the Firth of Clyde and North Channel. Variable 3 or less, becoming southerly 3 or 4, then veering southwesterly 4 or 5 later. Smooth or slight, becoming slight or moderate later near Mull of Kintyre. Fair, then occasional rain or drizzle. Moderate or good, occasionally poor later. Mull of Kintyre to Ardnamurchan Point. Variable 3 or less, becoming southwesterly 4 or 5, veering southwesterly later, but becoming cyclonic in north. Smooth or slight until later in southeast, otherwise slight or moderate. Fair, then rain with fog patches later. Good, becoming moderate or poor, occasionally very poor later. The Minch, strong wind warning. Northwesterly 3 or 4, becoming variable 3 or less, then easterly or northeasterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later in south. Smooth or slight until later in central areas, otherwise slight or moderate. Fair, then rain, fog patches later in south. Good, becoming moderate or poor, occasionally very poor later in south. Ardnamurchan Point to Cape Wrath, a strong wind warning. Northwesterly 3 or 4, becoming variable 3 or less, then easterly or northeasterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later in south. Moderate, occasionally slight near Sutherland. Fair, then rain. Fog patches later in south. Good, becoming moderate or poor, occasionally very poor later in south. Shetland Isles. North or northwest 4 or 5, slight near shore, otherwise moderate. Showers, moderate or good. Channel Islands. Northwesterly 3 to 4, locally 2 around dawn, becoming westerly by late morning, locally 5 late afternoon and early evening. Slight, perhaps locally moderate at times. Isolated mist and fog patches becoming more widespread in the evening. Moderate to good, locally poor or very poor. And that concludes the shipping forecast.